Welcome to the sixth segment in the My Farm to ECE webinar series. This is purchasing local food from a broadline distributor. This is the third in our local purchasing mini series within this webinar series. We talked about purchasing local food from farmers as well as purchasing local food from food hubs in our two previous webinars. If you've missed any of the previous webinars, you can view them on our website, myfarmtoschool.msu.edu. Today we'll be covering an introduction to local food purchasing from a broadline distributor. And I want to emphasize that the purpose of this webinar is to allow early childhood programs that work with broadline distributors to be able to access more local foods through those sources. Many programs throughout the country have a sort of blended approach to local food purchasing that incorporate purchasing from their broadline distributor as well as other local sources. So hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll have an idea of some preliminary steps you can take to access local foods through your broadline distributor. My name is Abby Harper. I'm the Farm to School Specialist at the Center for Regional Food Systems here at MSU, and I'll be guiding you through the webinar today. So just a refresher on what we've talked about in previous weeks. If you're using the Child and Adult Care Food Program funds, you must follow proper procurement procedure. This means using the appropriate method depending on what quantity of food that you're purchasing. We did an in-depth webinar on this about 4 weeks ago that you can find online. Most folks in early childhood will use the informal purchasing method in that center box, and this requires cost comparisons from a minimum of 3 different vendors. However, often as broadline distributors tend to provide more products, you may need to follow a formal procurement method, and we'll go through an example of those in more detail during this webinar. So what is a broadline distributor? You may also hear a broadline distributor referred to as a full-service distributor. It's a business that carries a high-volume, full line of products and manages the logistics for ordering and delivery. It's easiest to understand what a broadline distributor is in the context of some Michigan examples. So the 4 main ones that we have here in Michigan are US Foods, Cisco, Gordon's, and Van Eerden. And these all provide food products as well as often other products. While many of these companies source Michigan products and in some cases even have Michigan product lines, they also source products from all over the country. This allows them to be consistent and dependable in the products that they carry, but it also means that you have to do a little bit more legwork to find out what products they have are from Michigan. As consumers have demanded more local products, many of these companies are trying to source more local to meet their customers' demand. This really emphasizes that customers, including you all, can have an impact on a company's sourcing practices. So make sure that whatever company you use or begin to work with knows about your inclination to local products and that you're in discussions about how to utilize them to achieve your program goals. Broadline distributors can sometimes be a little bit challenging to get local food from just because it's not their sole practice and it's not necessarily something that they make information readily available by. But there are a lot of benefits of working with a broadline distributor when you're trying to find local food. For one thing, it provides a streamlined approach to your purchasing practices if you're already using a broadline distributor for other purchases. It's a good place to start and it helps to keep your processes simple. It also limits the administrative burden by working with one vendor rather than trying to source from several different farms. Since broadline distributors source from many different farms, they typically have large, consistent, and dependable quantities. There's also a buffer, so if one of the farms has a crop failure because they have lots of other producers to draw from, they can be sure to fill in that crop failure. But in that sense, there's not as much of a risk because you know you'll have a backup option. However, the backup option may not be sourced locally. Finally, broadline distributors typically have some level of stored products available year-round and some infrastructure for some minimal processed or frozen products. So it can be a good way to access local products even in the months when harvests aren't coming in. So there are 2 sides to purchasing from full-service distributors. The first is how to use your current broadline distributor to find local food. And the second is how to find a new broadline distributor and prioritize one with a local focus. So we'll first discuss how to use your current broadline distributor to find local food, and then we'll go through some examples when you're doing a new request for bids for finding a broadline distributor that has a local focus. As mentioned earlier, many broadline distributors are now carrying and advertising more local food products. Some Michigan distributors are even starting to have local lines or send out regular notifications about what local food products they have available. If you work with a broadline distributor, you likely have a sales representative that you work with for purchasing. The first step in trying to identify what local food products your broadline distributor carries is to schedule a meeting with your sales representative. You can ask them to provide information on any local purchasing initiatives that the company has and request a list of available products that are grown locally. From there, you can identify what products they sell that you would be able to use in your menu. Additionally, many programs have found success in developing a farm to ECE team and including their broadline representative in their team. This team is essentially a group of people that are aiming to move the farm to early care and education goals forward. This way, the representative can stay up to date about your priorities and what products you're interested in, and you can set up a regular schedule for meeting with them. So after your first meeting, it's really important to set up a regular schedule of communication in order to make sure that there is a standard practice set in place for making local purchasing more than just a one-time thing. The most important thing to flesh out in the long term is a communication plan. When will your representative let you know about local products that are available, and what plans does the company have for expanding local product availability? In these discussions, you can also work with them to identify any products they don't carry that your program is interested in sourcing locally to see if there are options for securing new farmers to produce those products. I also want to highlight one other Michigan resource that can be useful in identifying what local products your broadline distributors carries. Cultivate Michigan is a local food purchasing campaign out of the Michigan Farm to Institution Network. Every year, they highlight 4 seasonal products and they provide purchasing guides that carry information on where those products can be sourced from locally. Including in the purchasing guides is information about each broadline distributor and the local products that they have available. This screenshot shows outtakes from the Kale and Carrots guide. Kale was a spring featured food last year, and carrots was a summer featured food. As you can see, it includes all the broadline distributors in Michigan and any information that they make available on their products. In some cases, they instruct customers to call them to inquire about local products, as availability may vary within the season. But as you can see for other products, they provide detailed information on the product code, which allow you to easily shift your purchasing by choosing a different product code. Since broadline distributors are competitively contracted, you don't need to do any additional work to make sure that you're following CACFP guidelines once you're working with a broadline distributor. Once you have an agreement set up, you can easily just shift your purchases towards the local products that they carry by choosing those product codes or by meeting with your representative and establishing a standard process for finding local food. Now that we've covered how to find local through your current distributor, we'll discuss briefly how you can use your informal or formal bid process to find a distributor that has a local focus. Periodically, programs will rebid or reevaluate their broadline distributor against other options. As we discussed during our local procurement webinar, you are not allowed to use local as a requirement in your request for bids. Thus, finding a distributor with a local focus requires a bit of creativity. While you can't explicitly state local as a requirement, you can include characteristics of products as specifications in your request for bids. Some examples might include asking for particular varieties of products unique to the region, requiring that products be delivered within a certain time period after harvest, so putting specifications on freshness. As you can imagine, sourcing from a farm in California may take longer to transport than sourcing from a farm in Michigan. So if you're limiting your window of harvest to delivery to 48 hours, it's more likely that it will come from a local farm. You can also ask that anyone submitting bids must have available information on the state of origin of the products they provide. And finally, you can require a certain level of customer service that your representative is available to meet and discuss local food availability. You can also ask broadline distributors who apply for your request for bids to provide any information on local purchasing initiatives up front. That way, when you decide to purchase from one, you already know ahead of time what local products they have available, and it can be a starting point for further conversations with your sales representative. One other option for gearing your request for bids towards broadline distributors with a local focus is to apply geographic preference. This method applies to unprocessed or minimally processed products, and essentially it awards a price preference to distributors that are able to meet your definition of local. You must state the preference you are going to give up front, and you still need to evaluate all the submitted bids based on the lowest cost, factoring in that preference. What geographic preference does is essentially allow you to give a slight edge to vendors that feature local products. For example, a program could include in their solicitation that the program will award a 5% price preference to vendors that are able to provide 50% of produce from within their definition of local, which is the state of Michigan. So a 5% price deduction would be applied to the submitted bid that meets that definition of local. It should be noted that this does not guarantee that the award will go to the distributor with a local focus. It just makes it more likely that they will be cost competitive with other vendors. This process is explained much more in depth in the USDA Guide to Procuring Local Foods than we have time to go into in this webinar, or you can also follow up with me for more guidance, and I'm happy to walk anyone through this process. I just wanted to highlight two examples of programs that are utilizing their broadline distributor for local food purchasing. These are both examples from Utah, coincidentally. The first is Salt Lake Community Action Program. They have an extensive local procurement strategy that, along with their broadline distributor, includes on-site gardens and local farmers. They are able to procure a lot of local food from their broadline distributor, and they schedule regular meetings with their sales representative to discuss local products. To institutionalize it and make sure that it is a process that continues throughout the years, they have an agreement that whenever a local version of a product they typically order is available, the sales representative orders the local product as long as it falls within a certain price range. And they've determined that price range based on what's cost effective for their program. So this way, whenever a local product becomes available, they don't need to discuss it. The sales representative knows they would just prefer to purchase locally. A to Z Building Blocks also utilizes their broadline distributor to purchase local foods in addition to purchasing from a local farm stand. Their representative provides regular lists of the locally grown fruits and vegetables that they make available, and then they meet every 6 months to go over new lists of local vendors. As you can see, both of these programs have, as part of their strategy, cultivating a deep relationship with their broadline distributor sales representative. These structures allow them to source local food while still using one of their standard purchasing methods. At the same time, they're working to build other local purchasing initiatives through other sources like farmers and gardens and farm stands. So all of these work together to form their local purchasing strategies. And that's purchasing local food through a broadline distributor. We have some time